Board of Education to order and ask that you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, sir.
Mr. Birchfield?
Here.
Mr. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Trombley?
Here.
Mrs. Minor? Here. Mr. Stahl?
Here.
Dr. Chesney?
Here.
Mr. Kraus?
Here. Next item up is the approval of tonight's agenda. Do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented?
So moved. Support.
We have a motion supporting discussion on tonight's agenda. All right, I see none. All in favor of accepting the agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. Next item up, Dr. Gray, Shining Star.
It's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Colleen Deven tonight, our principal at Bridge Alternative High School, and she has a Shining Star to talk about.
Okay, if you'll have to just give me 2 seconds.
You need help, Colin?
Yeah, well, I have to sign out with you and sign in.
So while we're waiting,
I was gonna say
you could mention,
while we're waiting, up on the video screen was a montage of pictures and stuff from Patriot Week put together by Kim Hubert, just to show what we were doing in honor of Patriots Week. So it's a resolution the board's taken to the heart and put a lot of effort into. So it's nice to see some snapshots and pictures of what the kids are doing throughout the week.
we'll post this online too. We just haven't done that yet this week. Also,
Yeah.
thank you. Do that. What are you reading, Colleen?
Yeah. I don't know, is there a timer?
Yeah.
These guys in public. Step back or step in front of them, one or the other. Just step in front. Switch spots.
All right, thank you for your patience. Our student representative this evening, Arthur Schmeiser, he is one of our seniors this year. He didn't know he was getting this award this evening. He's been part of our Bridge student leadership team for the last 2 years. In May of 2016, our Bridge student leadership team went to the Michigan Alternative Education Organization conference, and students at the conference are entered in various competitions. Marcus was entered in the art and expression category, and he won first place for the Bridge logo design. So we had them made into t-shirts, and so we wanted to honor him this evening with the Shining Star Award. By the way, t-shirts are $15 in our office, and all of the proceeds will go towards a scholarship fund. So,
Go right down behind there. Congratulations.
thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, we're to the point of our meeting called Call to the Public. This is your opportunity to address the Board of Education. I see we have probably a decent crowd of people who probably want to address the board this evening. We allot 3 minutes for each person. We just ask that you respect that time. Dr. Chesney will give you a little bit of a warning when you got about 30 seconds left in your time, and then a red folder when you're at your time. So we ask you to try to wrap up on time and so we can get through this in an orderly fashion, okay? So if you'd like to address the board, you can please come up to the podium and state your name and address.
My name is Joshua Wood. I'm a CW coach. I do not live in the Brighton area, but I can provide my address if you still like. As you can see, there's several members of the CW swim team here. As I'm sure everyone is aware, there's been a lot of issue with the contract and with Best. I just wanted to start by asking that if we do address the contract, that Mr. Birchfield abstain from voting on it, as his kids do swim for Best. I think that is a conflict of interest, in my opinion. And based on the meetings I've watched, I think that he may have trouble separating his opinion from what is impartial vote. Just speaking about Best for a second, I understand as a board where all these negative feelings towards CW comes from. I totally understand. When I went through the minutes, there was 6 times since August of 2015 where there's been a Best parent or member in here to complain about big bad CW. I just want to clarify that we're not this monstrous club trying to destroy the local swim community or get rid of Best. We have no problem with Best. We like Best. They exist, great for them. If not, that's fine too. Sure, we love the 5 to 7 time slot, obviously. I'm kind of getting tired of eating dinner at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. But if that's not possible, we're fully fine with it. We're not competing against them. It's against the rules, USA Swim rules, for us to recruit them. I don't think we're stealing any members from them. Last my count, we have actually lost 4 members to Best, including 2 coaches. We have a friendly relationship with Best. We're hosting a meet at Brighton High School in a couple weeks. We invited them to come to our meet. When the flags broke at the pool, we bought flags and we offered them to use them if they would like. I just want to clarify that we're not here to get rid of Best. We're here for the kids who want to swim for CW, and this way they don't have to drive 45 minutes. It already, as it is, some of them don't get home to 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and then they have homework. And they have to get up the next day. So I just wanted to clarify that we are not trying to get rid of Best at all. We just want to do what's best for the kids and provide them an opportunity. And I know that may seem like we're trying to get rid of the club that's here already, but we're not. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Alicia Reed. I live at 4806 Windswept Drive. I just wanted to mention to the board some of the great things that are happening over at Maltby. I went to the PTO meeting this week and heard a lot about the social media event that they're putting on for parents to try and help us figure out how to talk to our kids about how to be safe with social media and to teach us what's going on, because there's certainly a lot more than I understand. And I would recommend to the board that you take a look at that program and see if that's something we can roll out to our other schools, because that's probably very valuable to all of the parents in the district and for all of the students in the district.
Thank you.
Hi, back on the Best in CW topic. First, I'd like to thank you all for extending the CW practices at Brighton. I've lived in Brighton for 3 years, 2 of which I've swam for Best. They're a great team with lots of potential, but at the moment, I can't compare them with CW. I switched to CW because I just needed more of a challenge as I was getting older, and to drop more time in my races. For the past year, I've been on the CW team, and I really felt myself getting faster. I practice every day at Brighton, but if there were to be only practices in Ann Arbor, I definitely wouldn't be getting the days I needed in. Since school started, I've been doing around 4 hours of homework each night. And if I spend 2 more hours just in the car going to practice to Ann Arbor, it would be really damaging to my grades also. This is just why I need CW at the Brighton pool.
Thank you very much.
Your name, please? Ma'am? Chloe, last name?
Hi, my name is Jill Reed, the mother of that beautiful young lady who just spoke to you. She is one of my 2 children that go here to Brighton schools, and she's a sophomore, and humbly did not say that she's a state swimmer for Brighton. She was last year as a freshman, and she currently has 3 state times, 1 individual, 2 relays this year. We just want to thank you for the opportunity to voice our opinions tonight. I know that there's a lot of us. As she mentioned, we did move to Brighton 3 years ago. We moved because we love the community and the school district. Chloe swam for best for 2 years. After her freshman swim season, she decided she needed a more rigorous training, which we were thrilled that Brighton had collaborated with Club Wolverine. This allowed Chloe elite training while not compromising her study or homework time, or important to swimmers, her sleeping pattern. More sleep is always better for swimmers. We were sad to hear recently that the CW program may be terminated. As you can see from the turnout tonight, CW is Brighton community. They want to work with BEST, not against BEST. They're 2 totally different programs. We know this because she's been in both programs. And they're for 2 totally different types of swimmers. There should not be any threat to BEST to have Club Wolverine there. Most of the swimmers who are in your 2 fastest lanes are Club Wolverine swimmers. They're also all your state swimmers. They're the swimmers who bring you top 5 state championships, or top 5 in the state each year at states. And they also help bring home a lot of conference titles for Brighton High School. So by you telling them that they need to go swim 45 minutes away every single day, but please come back and swim for our high school during the high school season, I think is just kind of a slap in the face to these girls and and to the boy swimmers as well. Sorry, guys. And to our boy swimmers as well. I know a lot of them as well are very good students on the honor roll, and this would hinder their academics as well. So hopefully tonight you take that into consideration when you're voting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kathy Fisher, 8677 Ardmore in Brighton. I wanted to do just kind of a throw out to the crowd here. Could the Brighton school swimmers who are with CW just stand up really quick? I think it's important for you to see that CW have Brighton school swimmers on the team, and that's what this is all about. I was with BEST, with my family. We swam with Brighton USA, and you just get to a point where you need something more. Thank you, you guys can sit down. And thank you for coming, because we want you to know that these kids are committed to swimming. It's 3 hours a night on some nights, so add that to school. It's hard on them, it's hard on the parents to get them down to Ypsilanti or Ann Arbor. So we appreciate having the Brighton pool available to them, but they're going to bring something back to the school as well. So it's in the best interest of the families, of the swimmers, and just getting that next level that we get with CW. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Mona Shand. I live at 4852 Oak Tree Court in Brighton. I have 2 kids who are swimming with Club Wolverine right now. I have one son who swam for Best previously. And I just want to say that I think both of them are excellent programs. I also think that they are very different programs. They have different goals. They don't compete with each other. And I think that there has to be a way for them to coexist. I think that it's in the benefit of Brighton and Brighton area schools for them to coexist. And it can only serve to draw more families to what is already an outstanding district, to have both a strong recreational swim team and a nationally recognized club team. I think it can only bring families in here. Over the summer, there was one day where we were at the pool. There was a meet that had, it was a summer swim team meet. So it was Best against the Oak Point swim team. The swim team was going on at the same time as Club Wolverine practice. Sure, at first, for the first few minutes, it was a little bit odd. Like anything new, it's an adjustment period. But eventually, everything, from my perspective anyway, seemed to go pretty well. And it was actually great to see the kids sharing the pool so well. And I hope that the adults can find a way to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Although I was a competitive swimmer in high school and college, this is a new topic. I have asked informally for this a couple times. I am now formally asking for documentation, including the bond committee meeting minutes for January through December of 2014, which seem to be missing from the website. I would also like to see on the website details of the school bond meeting minutes and the minutes from the school board meetings with respect to the timeline of expenditures and the meeting where the full board granted Dr. Gray discretionary approval and set aside the line item approval that the full board had prior to that point. I think it would be helpful, and I think the commonality that I see here, I see a lot of really dedicated Club Wolverine parents, I see dedicated Best parents. My grandmother used to say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The commonality that I see here is we are a small town, and when we don't bring all stakeholders to the table in advance of a decision that's going to impact stakeholders, it never works out well. It never works out as well as it could have had we taken a step back and recognized that decisions that we make with really small groups of people holding more power without including individuals that are going to be impacted on both sides, it never works out as well as it could have. So I think the lesson to take away from a variety of things is that we are a close-knit community, and in that spirit, I'm asking for basically a timeline and a delineation of the difference between the expenditures that were originally approved by voters for the bond, for the $88 million bond, versus the expenditures that we actually made on a light item, essentially a section in the board on the website, so that we don't keep recreating the wheel. One of the things about Brighton that is a strength that can also be a weakness is that we have a turnover of families, and I think one good way to help people understand what has gone on and what is going on, whether it be differences in pay fee structure, is to get that information out in a much more visible way so that you don't have to dig. So, thank you. Julie Hine, 6975 West Ridge Drive, Brighton.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kelly House Seaman. We just moved 10406 Heidi Road, Brighton, Michigan. My daughter is Taylor Seaman. Just to give the board a little bit of perspective on the benefits of BEST and then the benefits of CW. My daughter swam for BEST from the time she was 8 years old until just after high school season or freshman year. It was great for her. She had some really good times and was doing very well. After her first high school season, she realized she needed to have more challenges and be able to swim on relay teams with girls at the same level as her. So we made that decision to go to CW at that time. It was in the middle of November. Driving 45 minutes one way, we did it for the last 3 years. When we heard that CW was coming to Brighton, we couldn't have been happier. It gave her the option of not having to drive down 45 minutes one way. She could practice at Brighton, she could get her homework done. It was just, it's very convenient for her. The benefits that CW gave her freshman year of high school, she did not qualify for states in the 200. She barely qualified in the 100. She started at CW a year later, her sophomore year. She finished 4th in the state in the 200 and 1st. Only the second time in Brighton high school history that we had a state champion swimmer. And it was because of the benefits that she received from CW. Not that they were competing with us, it was just a higher level that she needed at the time. BEST and CW are two separate things. They don't compete with each other at all. It offers all of these kids in here an opportunity to be their best. And I can't tell you how many times she stayed up past midnight doing her homework because she had to drive down to Ann Arbor. And if that could save these kids, she's a senior this year, so it's not going to benefit her that much. But in the future, if all of these kids could benefit from it being local, that would be a tremendous thing for the Brighton community. There are swimmers here who just started with CW this summer, who swim on the team with her, who have had drops in time greater to or equal to what she had between her freshman and sophomore year, as a result of being able to practice at Brighton High School during the summer, twice a day, or many hours. So I just wanted to give you the perspective of somebody who went through BEST and through CW, driving down Ann Arbor every day. It's a pain. And if we could come to an agreement here that both of them can exist and benefit the community, I would say that I agree 100% that they do both benefit the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi there, I'm Tom McHugh, 4894 Brookwood Meadows Drive. I love Brighton. I've got 3 kids. We've got 2 of those kids that are CW swimmers. One of my oldest son did BEST for, I think it was a year. Had a great experience. In fact, he went to a summer meet and took first in the summer league. And we hadn't put a whole lot of effort and challenge in front of him yet. And so we knew that we wanted the next level of competition. And then in the fall, this was last fall, CW came in and it was perfect. He was not the top kid. I didn't want him to be the top kid, I wanted him to be challenged. He's being challenged, and that's awesome. To me, the difference between BEST and CW is a little bit like the difference between a community college and a 4-year college with many degrees that are available. A community college can offer only a certain amount of things, whereas a 4-year college can offer so much more. And I see CW doing that. CW and BEST are doing great together, it seems. I don't know the exact numbers for BEST, but the numbers when I go see their practice at the beginning of our practice, it's thriving. To me, it looks like it's thriving. The coaches are out there, the kids are having a great time. It looks like it's thriving. And then we have another thriving program come in, and we are utilizing this pool to its fullest. we built this beautiful pool. Let's not just use it 2 hours a night. Let's utilize it to its fullest. And by having CW there, we are really bringing a very good program into Brighton here that we can really give to the kids in the community. I really see this as a benefit. I know surrounding families from Howell, from Pinckney, have come to Brighton schools and are now enrolling their kids into Brighton schools because of their experience with CW. They got into the school and became familiar with it, and they're now enrolled in Brighton schools. 4 kids. Multiply that times $7,000 per kid. I really think it's a benefit to the school district to have both programs. I really think BEST is great. I think CW is great. Let's have both.
Anybody else like to address the board this evening? All right, I see none. That ends our call to the public. Next item on the agenda tonight is the superintendent report.
We'll begin with the student reps, and we're going to kick it over to Marcus, who already started tonight. So Marcus, you're up.
Hello, my name is Marcus Schmeiser, as I was already introduced. I'm a senior at the Bridge this year, and our year is already off to a great start this year. And we have 50 kids that aren't even from Brighton areas that are choosing to come to our school. And this year we have 100 students. Last year we had less than 100. We have new carpets this year, which, I mean, yeah, it's carpet, but you should have seen the carpets last year. We have a new office secretary, Ms. Pam Kilpatrick, new science teacher, Penny He, new online coordinator, Elise McKenna, and a new art teacher, Miss Wendy Rue. Bridge leadership students, which I'm a part of, started doing their monthly work at God's Kitchen, which is now we go there and help them serve food to people who need food every Wednesday at the beginning of the month. And Miss Devon went a couple weeks ago, and she had a great time. Last week was our open house, and 20% of the families came and represented, and we look forward to a great year. But a little bit about why I went to the Bridge is because I went to Howell Public Schools. Before that, I came from Redford to Howell. That's a hard switch to make if you're not aware. And the school was just not doing it for me. I had up to 90 absences, I think. And then I told my mom that I refused to go back to public schools. And then I wanted to do online, but she found the Bridge. And then I met Ms. Devon. And all the teachers actually care about us, and they help us do the work. And I actually want to go to school now. And before, I didn't think I was going to graduate, but now I'm graduating with like all A's. Thank you.
Marcus, I just think you proved why you're a shining star again. So yeah, try following that, Tom.
I think we also had a good start to the year at Brighton High School. We had our Patriot Week, as we saw in that montage. We got our pocket constitutions, which everybody loves. We had our windows painted around the school. We had ribbons on people's cars. We showed a 7-minute 9/11 video. Friday was our USA Spirit Day, which was really fun. Everybody was in red, white, and blue. And we also had the student section, red, white, and blue at the football game. This week we have our BCom Club Day this Wednesday, which is where clubs and activities, they set up tables in the gym to answer questions and get people to sign up for their clubs. It's open at lunch for all students to come and look around. We have over 100 clubs at the high school, and there's some I didn't even know. I was going to share a couple that were pretty interesting. The Bass Fishing Club, which I'd love to get into. The Brighton Mathletes, Dungeons and Dragons Club, Model United Nations Club, Yoga Club. There's just something for everyone. And I think the amount of clubs at our school is just awesome because everybody can find something they like and they can be passionate about it. Also, homecoming is coming up pretty quick. The dance is October 8th from 8 to 11. The theme is Galaxy Getaway. We're releasing the Spirit Week video this Friday, so the kids are going to start getting their clothes and stuff, and they get into that pretty good. We're starting to design floats in the float buildings on the 5th and the 6th of October. And the exec board's already started to plan the parade, which is a lot of work. I'm going to pass out this letter to the board members here to invite you to the parade. The RSVP is by the 29th, which is this Thursday. Kind of short notice. But, then also Pink Week's coming up pretty quick. That's October 17th through the 21st. We're starting to solidify events and activities. We're already starting to get donations. I'll pass that out too. If anyone knows anyone that's interested in donating, or you know someone who's donated, please look at the flyer or talk to someone at the high school. All the funds this year are going to St. Joe's Cancer Center of Brighton to help cancer patients that are having a hard time paying for their necessities. The week kicks off with the Powder Puff football game on Monday, and it comes to an end on Friday with the Pink Out football game. And that's about it for me, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just one quick thing. We've been kind of tracking enrollment so far and looking at test scores as well. And enrollment looks very solid this year. Next Wednesday is actually the first fourth Wednesday count. So a very important day to have everybody there. It looks like the district might eclipse 6,000 students for the first time in over a decade, in-district students, so that's very positive. This summer alone, we processed 922 new enrollment packets. So that was a busy summer in my office and for Star and Karen Jacobs. On top of that, I've shared with you our M-STEP scores from last year, and we're very encouraged, especially in those areas where we've put in significant amount of work related to science and math and all those things that you voted yes on and that we've been able to implement to the fullest extent. So I say it all the time, and you watch Marcus and Tommy, it's just never been a better time to be a Bulldog. So I'm pretty happy about that, and the enrollment shows it, and I just wanted to thank you for your support.
All right, so now we come to our for-action part of the agenda. First item up is the minutes of September 12th. We have a motion to approve the minutes of September 12th.
Support.
We have a motion to support. Any discussion on those minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Some corrections and some clarifications. First off, and this is a correction, and I forwarded this to Mrs. Ackermeyer, but that and a lot of this is thanks to Mr. Wilson Vikings for reporting the meeting last week, because I looked up the precise wording, okay? And the precise wording of the motion that was made relative to Club Wolverine, it had nothing to do with the elimination. The exact words were for Club Wolverine to have D status according to our chart. And that is the quote. Okay, where our chart refers to the fee schedule that was approved by the board earlier in the summer. So that was the motion that was approved. And it just want to bring up that changing the wording on the contract to reflect the classification as Category D, which was basically what the board had discussed in all previous board meetings, was that it was Category D. And the motion was just to have the contract reflect the previous discussions. So that was the precise quote that I saw from them. And it is on us, and if this is too much of a departure, please don't. It is on us as board members to make sure that these different categories are clearly defined, because I think that's where the issues are coming in is how specifically are we defining categories A, categories B, category C, and categories D. Because there's been great difficulty with all parties associated with this. And I really do think that it comes down to we, as a policy-making board for the school district, correctly, concisely, precisely defining what those categories are, because I think that really is the essence of where the issues lie.
I want to finish that motion and the discussion, but I do want to come back and address that after we're done with this, to maybe look at how we can address that issue tonight. I know that we've all had discussions about policy and of those different items, so I think we need to maybe take a look at that and see.
Okay.
Not sure exactly how we should do it in the proper form, but let's get through this.
I just have, I don't really understand what you're correcting. On the motion to vote tonight for Club Wolverine to go from B to D status on the fee schedule, is that what you're correcting?
Yes, that the exactly worded motion was that for Club Wolverine to have D status according to our chart. That was what the motion was. And I had to listen to the recording, and that is the precise wording of what the motion was. It wasn't to move it from B to D, it was that Club Wolverine has D status according to our chart.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have support, we have, so you're amending, or just make, is that?
That's correction. I don't know whether that,
However you guys want to do it, if you want it to reflect that.
Amendment,
Yeah, whatever you do, amendment.
Okay, correction. We just noted as a correction, update the minutes.
and then I have a clarification.
Okay.
And the clarification, in the second call to the public, Mrs. Eikens brought up that it appears that Mr. Connolly's place of business is the campaign headquarters for Mr. Connolly's reelection campaign. And that was brought up in the second call to the public, and there wasn't an opportunity to address that, and I just didn't know whether Mr. Connolly wants to address that, or Mr. Connolly wants to address that.
Yeah, that's not the address. I have the address on my side.
Yeah, usually we don't address call to the public as a direct communication. We take information, process it, direct it to the right people, and if additional discussions happen, we have to offer that, so. This probably is the right place to have that.
So we're not asking for any clarification on the address on the campaign.
So we have a motion and support, we have a correction, clarification, any other discussion on the minutes from September 12th? I see none, all in favor of accepting the minutes as presented with correction, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes 7-0. Next item up, B, donation to BARC program.
Per Board Policy 7230, all gifts, grants, and bequests having a value of more than $1,000 should be accepted by the board. So tonight, we recommend you accept the donation of $4,100 from Dick's Sporting Goods to the BARC recreational program.
We have a motion to accept the BARC donation for Dick's Sporting Goods. We have a motion to support, any discussion on that? Other than we'd like to thank Dick's for supporting the community, supporting the BARC program. We really appreciate that. Those are the type of community activities that really make the district strong.
Do we send them a formal letter or anything?
Typically, we do.
Any other discussion?
On the BARC program regarding the after-school activities, we brought it up at the LCCA meeting, which is a prevention kind of discussion for schools. We talked about having things for students to do after school for positive engaging, and I think that, again, Dick's being part of it, and again, we see a lot of their support coming from the community, but I think that's really important. I think it's definitely a positive action to help our students for all your reports, so let's keep it up.
Thank you. All right, so all in favor of accepting the BARC donation to Dick's as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes 7-0. Next item up, the all policies, second reading, Dr. Gray.
You have the 6 policies in front of you. We received 0 questions in relation to any of the policies, and so we recommend these policies for adoption.
All right, we have a motion to accept the all policies as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion on this group of policies? I guess, Dr. Gray, we're in the policy season now.
We are in the policy.
Pretty regular for a while. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of accepting the Neola policies as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes 7-0. Now, I'd like to take a second, Dr. Rayner. We talked about this Club Wolverine thing and policy, and stuff earlier. And so I think that maybe this is a time for the audience we have, that we maybe have a discussion point about, maybe the history and how it got there. I don't know if that's Mr. Thompson or Blair, if he can chime in, but I mean, I just think there's a lot of pieces that haven't been connected throughout these discussions. I know that we had some discussions with some of the Club Wolverine parents along with our aquatics director, Mr. Thompson. We can.
Motion to add this to the agenda.
We have a motion. Support. Motion support to add the Club Wolverine contract discussion to the for action item.
For action?
Yeah, that's where we are. That's why I want to put it there. Or we put it for discussion. That's why I asked what the best way to.
You can do it either way.
You can do it either way. All right, so we have a motion to support. Any more discussion? I'll put it for action, right where we are. So we got item D for action. Any discussion on that before we vote? All right, all in favor of adding the Club Wolverine contract discussion for action item D, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. So now we're up to, where do we start?
You want me to give a historical?
Yeah, give a little historical on some of the, the bits and pieces of, from policy to administrative guidelines to, that. Because I think, like I said, as we've gone through it, we
So
know
the history of the program here dates back well over a year. I think I've talked about this at the board level before, but I had several parents who had taken their kids to Ann Arbor approach me about Club Wolverine and possible interest in terms of the new pool. If there was space, I brought it to the board. If you recall, we had that discussion. There was consensus to move forward with talking to Club Wolverine. We did so. At the same time, we were in the process of reorganizing our fee structure, which I think in the 8 years I've been here, we've done 3 times now. In terms of those, we used to do an hourly rate, then we went to a bulk rate, and then back to an hourly rate, and now some of them are at a bulk rate. So that's a fluid document, to say the least. And I think it's a fluid document because equity seems to be an issue in this district, and always will, probably in any district. The big question came about when we had A, B, C, and D in terms of categories, and what constitutes those categories. We have multiple groups in B that are not completely affiliated with Brighton area schools, but have Brighton area school students on them. We've talked about Club Wolverine being a B or being a D. The last meeting prior to the one, what we just had the for action item last time, if you recall, we talked about consensus as well. My understanding was they were to be charged at a group B rate, the roughly $20,000, and we were to check in quarterly. So when we left that meeting, I called you, President Krause, the next day, and I said, this is what I heard. Tell me if I'm correct. And that conversation ended. I was going to check in with them quarterly in terms of that. We had also discussed monthly, and that was kind of denied in terms of that, or it didn't receive what I felt was a majority support. There was never an action on it. Part of the confusion for us as administration is you guys don't vote on any of these contracts typically. I know the contract for Michigan Alliance isn't voted on. I know the contract for Top Gun volleyball isn't voted on. So it's strange for us to bring you these contracts because it's really outside your scope as a board. I don't know if that's caused some of the confusion in terms of this. Typically, we manage these contracts. I understand the nature of this particular contract and the opening of the new pool, and there was some tension out of the gate in relation to it, and I don't blame any of the sides. There just was. It is what it is. I thought we worked through last year, so we brought you that recommendation. There was a caveat in terms of the B, that we had the opportunity to add teams to a Schedule B instead of having to place them in a D based on our discretion. And that's kind of how we ended up at that spot. In terms of where it goes from there, I would say, since you voted last time, I would take a different vote. But again, I think we have to discuss this at a later work session because, again, these contracts really have no bearing at this level in terms of that. You guys set policy. You guys pass a budget, and to vote on individual contracts, I think muddies the water in our ability to implement administrative guidelines. So I think that's another piece that we have to look at is you have the policy, which the fee structure is part of. Does the administrative guidelines align with that? And I think that's where we're running into some problems, is that I don't know if the administrative guidelines are clear enough in terms of their scope to prevent some of these situations from happening. So that's kind of the history. I'm open to any questions if you have them. And go from there.
I got a question. So in Group B currently, the teams that are in there, do we have contracts with all those teams?
We don't. We don't contract with any of them.
Why?
We just don't. We never have. They rent our facility. We work out a dollar figure with them, and that's probably gone on for 50 years. I haven't been here that long. I talked to John about it, our athletic director. There's never been a contract in place for any of those. And prior to John, when we look back, there was never a contract in place for any of those. There was a fee structure. I think that's also why there might be some challenges because groups have come and gone. In terms of Group B itself, I think there's the caveat that leaves the door open for Group B based on the fact that even in the 8 years I've been here, teams have came into that group and have left that group. Some of them are successful, some of them are not, some of them change. If you remember, we used to have 2 youth football programs, now there's 1. And so those have morphed into something different in that Group B. So we've never, not to my knowledge, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know, we've never had a contract on any of those groups. And I don't believe we've ever had a contract on any Group Ds either.
That was my next question. So if we put someone in Group D,
They just, we have a very well-defined scheduling process, so we follow that scheduling process, and then we assign a fee to it, and we charge the groups, and the groups pay, and that's how it works. Now, I think some of the discussion happened, and some of this came about because we were kind of entrenched in the understanding on whether Southborough was going to be here or not when 2 of the groups pulled out and 2 of the groups stayed in. It created an interesting dynamic for us in terms of our rec program and their rec program, which is going very well, by the way, in terms of the collaboration. So that has been something that's worked. We kind of have a contract with them too, in terms of it, or a use or tenant agreement. But again, that didn't really come before you for a vote either. So that's kind of where that's at. I think down the road, and Mr. Birchfield, I think you made some good points last time on this. I think, again, it's the administrative guidelines. We know the what, the administrative guidelines are the how. And the how has been managed differently throughout each and every year, each and every decade. And I think that's probably why every 2 or 3 years, the fee structure gets changed because new groups come and go. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Some of the new groups that have linked together, like youth football, that's been very positive. Some of the other groups that have come and gone in our school system have created additional opportunities for kids, which has been great too. So I don't think we want to lock down that process to the point where it discourages new groups from coming and going. If that was the case, we wouldn't have some of these groups. We wouldn't have Park. We wouldn't have those types of opportunities. Maybe there's something, or maybe this is one of those very difficult to solve problems. I don't know.
I think I expressed this last time, if I said with my vote, that I didn't think we had the right to be dictating to our school and our administrators what they decide is a good program for our kids. The policies, you know, I agree with the policies. There needs to be good policies so we understand what it is that we're doing. But I think we have to rely on them to know what our community wants. They're coming to them saying we want these programs. And we've also got all these other programs that have been loosely discussed. I've got one that I do have skin in, and that would be the volleyball team. And my daughter participates in that program, and it's because she wants a little bit more than what she can get somewhere else. And there's many, many other programs she could choose. She just happens to like Top Gun. And we support her just like I would support any of my children in any program they want to go on. I see a bunch of people here that have decided CW is the way, and I think we've also seen a bunch of people that believe our school yield program is the way to go. And again, they're different places. I'm listening to this is kind of how I thought it was, and I'm listening, and this is what everyone's telling us. I'd like to take this opportunity, and I'm not sure if I can at this moment, but I'd like to make a motion. And I kind of thought this through before, and was hoping to get a chance to do this. My motion would be to move to allow, as recommended by the athletics director and the administration, and Club Wolverine's facility use category B, implementing district facility use for policy 7510 prior to March 1, 2017, and be billed per group need rates and processed for the 2016-17 use. And the reason for it is I think that's what's right too. I'll let our administration on this.
All right, so we have a motion for that. Do we have support?
Support.
All right, so some discussion on that motion.
So that would be so taking action on the motion would be in direct contradiction to what we have established as board policy per the recommendations of the administration months ago. I will, and I have the document right here. It's the Brighton Area Schools Rules and Regulations governing use and rental of building and related facilities, Brighton Area Schools, adopted by Brighton Area School Board of Education, June 2006.
That's the administrative guidelines, right?
I can't see it, but is that the fee schedule that we?
That's not the fee schedule. That would be the rules and regulations governing the use and rental of our facilities.
Is that board policy?
Yeah, that's board policy.
I think that's the handout we provided with the fee schedule. I do not believe that's board policy.
Yeah, Mr. Thompson, what's the policy that addresses this? What number?
Sure, it's board policy 7510. What Trustee Birchfield is referring to is the administrative guidelines that administration uses to implement board policy 7510. No.
Which is the crux of the issue here. We have bad administrative guidelines, or poor administrative guidelines, and we have a fee schedule that's been all over the board, and we don't have contracts with different clubs. So I see holes in this all over the place that raise a ton of red flags. This is not taking sides with Best and CW. This is purely adhering to what we've been presented and what we're supposed to uphold as a board. We're sitting up here representing this community as elected officials, and that's our responsibility, is to look out for what's in the best interest of the community, hold administration accountable based on policy and guidelines that are established within the school district. I understand the emotional side of this. I get it. And we can have a theoretical debate on youth sports all day long. But we're voting, or we've taken action on what's been presented to us from board policy and administrative guidelines.
But I think the policy, if I'm not mistaken, the policy says we turn this decision over to administration to make. That's why we don't vote on contracts. That's why we don't have contracts with anything else. And that's why. Now, I agree that we talked in the meeting the other day, the walk from our policy to our administrative guidelines as issues. But I would think that those issues have been created by the board injecting ourselves into the creation of that document. And the only document for policy that we approve is just the fee schedule. That's what as a board, that is what we approve.
Well, Jay, I would disagree from the premise that within here, it outlines the categories A, B, C, and D. So within the administrative guidelines, which is what the administration is supposed to adhere to, our expectation is that they would do so. But in their own guidelines,
is referencing the definitions of A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
There is, though. It's right here in the guidelines. So when that associates back to the fee structure, to the guideline.
See, this just says recreational for B, recreational partners listed on the fee and charge chart.
But look at D. And out-of-county nonprofit organizations.
I believe that is it the policy, I wish I printed one that I looked at it. You know what copy is?
I don't have a copy of policy 7510.
Because it does talk about activities that directly feed the school program and policy.
That is why the line is in the number, not number, but letter B, allowing us the ability to have some flexibility in bringing groups in and out of that particular. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Michigan Alliance, we wouldn't have Top Gun.
But in D, it says businesses, arts and craft shows, art guilds, etc.
And
out-of-county nonprofit organizations.
Again,
I think it means.
It's in need of a lot of work. I would agree completely.
And I think the point is, and Mr. Stahl did put it up nicely, is, you know, we have a huge problem with our walk from policy to how we're executing at the board.
Yes and no. Because again, in the last 20 years, that while John's been here 12, or close to 12, I've been here 8, this is the first issue we've had with this particular area. We've not had another issue in this category in over a decade. I don't see that as a crisis. In terms of which club goes where, we've managed that for over a decade. And that's what we do. If we see enough kids in a particular group that's going to benefit and it doesn't ruin other areas of the organization, we do it because we're trying to offer opportunity. I typically see areas where we have to mass change policy and administrative guidelines when they're consistently causing an issue over a sustained period of time. I understand some people's noses were out of joint originally in terms of this, and I understand, and I agree with Andy completely that it's not the politic of this, it's the procedure in terms of this. The procedure has worked for as long as John and I have been here, for over a decade, and again, I just don't see the crisis of this situation now. We manage every group that comes to us individually. We do it with other things as well. We're looking at strings or an orchestra. Let's talk about the fine arts for a second. You know what group's helping us through that? Ann Arbor Symphony. So are we to charge Ann Arbor Symphony more for an orchestra program because they're out of county? Or are we going to bring them in and work them into a nice situation so that we can have another opportunity for kids? That's what we kind of work on. And again, I have a threshold. I know the number of calls I get to where all of a sudden it's an issue, or emails or stuff like that. And again, in the 8 years I've been here, this is the only time I've dealt with this. Now, we've changed the fee structure 3 or 4 times over the last several years, just because of that. Wanted to change the fee structure. Hourly it worked one way, lump sum it worked another. But as far as the club's running and being successful, we have not had serious issues.
Mr. Trump.
So I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion that was previous, and I'd like that motion to be for us as a board to turn this back over to the administration, take us out of the equation. And because again, the point being is there's still students here, there's parents that have paid money for the year. I'd like this to go back to whatever the end of the contract is, September of 17 or whatever the contract reads. I'd like to take us out of that, turn it back to the board or to the administration to make the amicable call for everyone that they're happy with it, and then give us time as the board for the administration to come back with defined categories, with the different fees, again, that we can look at and vote on. If we sit up here and debate this tonight, it's going to be.
Okay, so we have a motion to turn the entire issue, just make sure we get this, I'm gonna try to make it brief.
To the,
Back to administration.
let them make the decision
Right.
to the end of the year.
While we as a board take on the task of.
That's correct.
At the end of
Based
the,
on their information that they give us.
end of the calendar year or end of the?
The contract, what their contract says.
September.
Whatever.
Yeah,
September.
You're right.
And as part of that, tasking the board to work on this.
That's correct. In the meantime.
We'll bring your recommendation.
Okay. So no.
Well, again, I'm not asking to come back for a vote again.
No, no.
I'm asking them to take care of it.
Okay, so we have a motion down here, we have support down there to hand this back per the law discussion I just had. I know it, Dr. Chesney had a comment before we got discussion. Yeah, we'll have a roll call on that, but we want to have discussion. Comments?
Yeah, just comments, is that, I mean, for me, the whole thing related to this is the board speaks the administration through policy. And we have these four different categories of A, B, C, and D. And we've talked about this before. And A, and this is roughly speaking, but I think it's generally correct. A is generally, in-district, school-related. C, I'm jumping from A to C. C is, in general, in Brighton, but not necessarily closely school-related, roughly speaking. And D is out-of-county, nonprofit, out-of-county areas. And those are defined more precisely by criteria, that if you fit this criteria, you are in this category. Okay, and I think historically that's the way they've been defined. Part of the big issue is B is defined not by criteria, but it's by example. B is, okay, this club, this club, this club, and whoever else we want to put in B. And that's how it's defined, and that's horrible policy.
Right, but I think that the mistake there is,
I
that's
would
not the
disagree.
policy.
I would disagree, just based on the fact that we don't know from moment to moment what club is going to spring up. My guess would be the next one related to the pool would be a water polo club. And I wouldn't want to bring a water polo club, especially if they're funding themselves, which is their club requirement for the first 3 years, in front of the board, again, to vote on what? That's not a contract you need to vote on. You need to vote on policy, and you need to vote on the budget in terms of that. Those individual contracts we can manage in terms of those things. And I think that's why the Group B is left a little more loosey-goosey than the other ones, because we can't predict what's going to evolve.
But having the criteria in there, B as these clubs and whatever other clubs we want to put in there, that makes the rest of the policy invalid. Because it's just saying that B is whoever we want to put in B.
Yep, I feel like it gives me options.
It's too broad.
And I feel like it violates policy,
I
it
think
makes the
that's why
policy
we,
invalid.
I think that's why we need to bring that back to the task of the board. Mr. Sullivan?
I just like to say this. Policy and rules and procedures are wonderful, but when they get in the way of something good, we have to have the ability, whether we write it differently in this entire policy, there has to be an out. Because I would hate to see a rule or a policy stop something good from happening here. Okay, so when we discuss this, and I happen to like what just happened here, I think it needs to go back to the hands of the administration. I think when we discuss this, that's what we need to look forward to. There's got to be something there that says, okay, we've got this rule, but this is going to be an incredible program for our kids. This is going to be something that benefits everyone in our community. And we can't say, well, sorry, we got a policy here, so we can't do that. I think our discussion needs to be, how do we make this more fluid so good things like this can happen? And I'll end there.
Any more discussion? All right, so.
I would, the only thing other that I would add on to that motion would be that there is a community stakeholder group that involves all the clubs within Brighton area schools to develop what this is.
Like an equal
Because
representation.
this is a long-term issue that we've talked about setting precedent. This is going to be something that is going to evolve over time. And we've got to look at this not in the immediate, but in the future. And what's in the best interest of this school district and this community.
we had a discussion about having something like that when we were forming the BART program. I agree 100%.
We're off the topic here.
Okay, yeah, we're off the topic. So sorry, and I think that was.
We'll put together samples of that and bring it
Yes, that's part of the solution. So the motion is to turn the Club Wolverine contract back over to administration for execution and management. And for the remainder of this coming year, those contract year. And as a board, we will take on through a subcommittee or whatever actions necessary to delve into this particular policy and administrative guideline. Everyone good with that?
As well as his community.
Yeah, the community involvement, however we subcommittee, the term can be defined, and it can be a little bit looser than that, but, you know, what we're saying is turn it over to administration, and we know we've got to fix the policy as we involve the right people.
And we will live with their decision.
Yeah, okay, everyone good? So we need a roll call vote to start.
Mr. Kraus.
Yes.
Dr. Chesney.
Support.
Mr. Stahl.
Yes.
Mrs. Minor.
Yes.
Mr. Trombley.
Yes.
Mr. Conley.
Yes.
Mr. Birchfield.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Thank you for your discussion. Thank you, Club Wolverine, for coming in tonight and sharing your thoughts with us. We're coming to the voice of our
You gotta stay now. That's not how it's works.
That's the rules. Okay, as it quiets down a little bit, we're walking up. Next up on tonight's agenda is for future action. Dr. Gray.
We have more policy. We have 3 of them tonight. We start with 6424 purchasing cards, which has been turned over to Dr. Gistinger, and it will be recommended in 2 weeks for approval. That is a new policy. If you look at the next 2 policies, they primarily deal with weapons. If you look at our recommendations, we have chosen to keep the original language that prohibits visitors from possessing, storing, making, or using a weapon in any setting that is under the control and supervision of the board, including but not limited to property leased, owned, or contracted by the board, all school-sponsored events, or in a vehicle. And as you transition through that, you can see on the next page as well that we keep it a weapon-free zone. Page 304 as well. The new language on page 53 would be a parolee. This is again prohibiting a parolee, probation, or correction officer or abscond or recovery unit member of the Department of Corrections. That individual has obtained a Michigan Department of Corrections weapon permit. So that would be the change there. If you look at 7217, again, this deals with, I'm sorry, that's page 404 on page 54. The other one is in bold. This is again a retired corrections officer, county sheriff's department. That individual has received, I'm not going to read it off to you, you can read it and ask questions if you have it, but the last one is again, policy 8142.01. This is a new policy. Again, this we can read through, but prohibits people from possessing or storing, just like the other paragraph, without the permission of the superintendent. There are times where we have, and there are things on the back page that you can give exemptions for. You can see we've checked all 4 of the 5 actually. If you look, it would be weapons under the control of our law enforcement personnel. Items approved by the principal as part of a class or individual presentation, like a Civil War recreation. We've taken it a step further in that we would have a trigger lock mandatory on any of those, and maybe even a shoot shotgun, so a slug lock where you put it right through the actual chamber itself. Theatrical props that do not meet the definition of a weapon, used in appropriate settings, and we do use starter pistols at some of our particular events. We did not pick the last one because we do not want firearms that are lawfully stored inside a locked vehicle in the school parking area if the district adopts appropriate safeguards, because I felt there was too much risk in terms of that particular one.
Okay, so questions on the next couple weeks?
Yeah, just on page 55.
Yep.
Okay, so just weapons, prohibits without the permission. I'm struggling with the double negative here. This means that you have to give permission in order for it.
That is correct.
Okay.
And what would you give permission for?
I
Only
wouldn't.
the items on the back?
Only the items on the back if we would have the permission.
And then for Dr. Gistinger, the purchasing cards, what is that? What are those?
We call them P cards.
Oh, okay.
The
so
credit card.
It's just the credit cards used for purchase of
We have
stuff.
over 60 in the district.
Okay. And why is this being called, or what's different?
We've never had a purchasing card policy. This is new, and every now and then our auditors will ask for this, and it's just good fiscal policy to have one.
Okay.
It's not required, but again, we want to make our auditors happy.
So, on a couple of questions on page 51 and 51 and 52 specifically. There's a lot of language that's crossed out. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so our policy rep recommended that we not select these other options for various reasons across the state. A lot of these deal with the city in which you work. They've had some issues in terms of their K-12 and the weapons policies in terms of those. So their recommendation was not to select those. We would keep it as basic as ours was. We take a more conservative approach.
So am I reading this correctly? And that's why I'm asking these questions. Are we permitting a CPL or an open carry to be?
Well, we can't prohibit it. We can't prohibit it in open carry. We can't prohibit that with a CPL. It's just like the situation they had at Howell that was well documented in the news at the beginning of school. If somebody, we have a process that we use at every one of our facilities if somebody comes on property with a weapon. But even though schools are deemed weapon-free zones, there's a wrinkle, I would call it a wrinkle right now, in the ability for people to open carry or close carry the CPL on school property presently. So we have a process in place that we utilize with administrators and with our school liaison.
Page 55, last paragraph, kind of talks about that.
No, 55 is a different policy.
Yeah.
Well, it's under weapons, though, and it gives him the individual who violates his policy to law enforcement officials.
So that's where I'm trying to get clarification. What's driving us to make a change from our current policy?
The current policy is the one that I have keep next to. The option below, we've never checked. You would see an X next to the brackets if we had selected those. Every time I select them, I put a big, like, pen X on those to indicate that we've selected those. So the policy remains static with where it was previously.
So the cross-outs on the language in here
Means we're not selecting any of those options.
But those aren't current.
They're not our current policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting formula.
Every time they bring you the policy, they bring you the existing policy, which is not in bold, if it doesn't say new. So this is revised at the top. So we already have policy on this. If it's not in bold, it's what we have. But if there's no check on the option, then we have not selected that option at this stage.
And what threw me was the cross-out of the language, not the...
I just wanted to be real clear that we were not taking those out.
That would have been...
Now, if you look like on page 53 and you see under B, the stuff in bold, that stuff in bold would, because there's no option on it, it would be tied to new state regulations. And there's no choice. For us to be in compliance, we'd have to select.
Yeah, that doesn't...
And look on page 55. On page 55, if you see a bracket with an X like that through it, that means we're recommending that that be added to our policy, or that be an option in this particular new policy.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and then again, once again, Ms. Trump.
Back on page 53, and item B, lists the people that are allowed to carry them. Meaning corrections officer, a security officer. So really, anybody that, you know, that's a deputy sheriff or something, that's got a gun, can bring it on to school.
Yes.
Why is that?
That's what the law is.
So
That's why it's in bold.
So the law says that we have to allow these people,
We can't prohibit anyone.
as well as a security guard, run a cop with a gun.
We could.
Well, there's other variations to that, because that falls under Public Act 330, which is private security, and
Now, we
there's
choose
other
not to.
regulations that falls under.
Yeah.
So that's not just the $10 an hour security.
Correct. We choose not to do that with our security, like, say, a Friday night football game. We choose not. But if we wanted to, we could. We just don't think that sends the right message.
Okay, well, as normal, if you have questions before the next meeting, should Dr. Ray do his best to assist you. Next item up is certified staff resignation.
We'll be recommending in a couple of weeks that you accept the resignation of Becky Lucas, special education teacher from Maltby, and Kellen Kirby. Becky had 7 years of service, and Kellen had 2. Both have submitted their resignation.
Questions? All right, that takes us to the for information section. First item up, curriculum and instruction, Dr. Surrey.
Thank you very much. Just a couple quick things. Tomorrow, we're launching our enrichment program for 2nd through 4th grade, and Jillian McGolan and Kim Lewicki have just done a fabulous job in, I think, designing. I've been very impressed with their design efforts, and they've been meeting with the school teams and the administration in order to get this set up to launch. They'll be using Project Lead the Way with the students, 2nd grade through 3rd grade and 4th grade, twice a week. 2nd grade would be 30 minutes at a time. The 3rd and 4th grade would be more like 45 minutes at a time for those 2 days. And then the days when the ladies aren't meeting with them, the kids will be doing independent work. Google Classroom's been set up for them. They'll be in the computer lab working. Some of the buildings are going to have some parent volunteers come in during that time to support the kids, and other buildings are doing more of a family style of instruction during that time, so that there's a teacher who's available to also mentor and support. And I think our media specialists will be also available and very hands-on with those kids and helping them with their projects. So we're really excited about that. Also, and the only other thing I want to mention tonight is I really want to thank the buildings for their great efforts with Patriot Week. We got a lot of things in place before I had to take a little bit of a break, and I'm just very thankful to our principals, our teachers, and curriculum office people, the superintendent. Perhaps you guys gave some additional support at the building levels. I'm not aware of everything, but like football game, I'm just really impressed and pleased and thankful for your participation and support. And I also wanted to bring for the board, as a thank you for you, the pocket constitution that you provided actually for our students. And you'll see inside the front cover there's a label that says provided by Brighton Area Schools Board of Education in honor of Constitution Day and Patriot Week 2016. And so every student in grades 2nd through 12th received one of these, and I know our social studies teachers be reinforcing the use of these through the year. And so anyways, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Surrey. Finance, Dr. Fischer.
Good evening, Board. The annual audit commenced today. You have in your packet the bills of September 9th through the 16th, as well as the fiscal year-end financial statements for June of 2016. I would like to direct your attention to the bottom of page 76 in your board packet. This is where we summarize the results of our fiscal year-end, and we started the fiscal year with $1,545,149 in fund equity. We have finished the fiscal year end with $2,469,116, and we have a targeted fund equity policy of 10%. If you take our existing fund balance as a percentage of revenue, which I believe is best practice, because if you take it as a percentage of expenditure, you can spend as much as you want. So really our confining amount is what revenue we take in. We're at 3.93%. And if you look at the percentage of expenditures, it's 3.99%. This is what a well-run, fiscally sound organization should look like. We're putting a little bit of our operating revenue into our reserves every single year to build up our reserves in the event that we have an economic downturn like we have experienced in the past, or some other unforeseen events that we can only begin to imagine. I think it was not very long ago when none of us ever thought our property values were ever going to decline, and look, for the first time they did. And so to protect the district from these cyclical events, it's always good to have a fund equity reserve. One of the conversations that we routinely have is how are we operating in comparison to our budget? And we have finished the fiscal year with a 0.0016% variance, which is just a smidge over 0.1% of variance in our operations. So we're doing a very good job of complying with our budget. And the number that we put in fund equity was just about $1 million of our operating revenue. The rest of your financial statements outline the other funds besides the general fund, but I will wrap up my conversation and take questions at this time.
One interesting pointer to add on to that would be that 3.9% includes shared service revenue. So typically, we're not allowed to count shared service when we look at our budget, when you guys talk about staffing levels and those things. If you were to pull that almost $12 million out, it wouldn't be 3.9% fund equity, it'd be closer to 5% fund equity. Our goal this year would be to put approximately $2 million into fund equity. With shared services, you'll be in the 8 to 9% range. Without shared service, you'd be really close to that 10. So I think it's just an interesting note.
So there's, what, $11 to $12 million worth of shared services as revenue that you're counting? That's
Yes.
correct?
Counting when we give you the 3.9% fund equity. So if you take the $2.5 million and you take roughly $60 million for our budget, if you were to pull the $11 million out in terms of that, you'd have roughly a $50 million.
What was our net on shared services this year?
Yes.
2 million probably, something like that. 22, 23, 24%, something like that.
12 million, 2 million isn't 23%.
No, what I'm saying is if it's this year's close to 12 million. Last year it was just under 11 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at
And what was our net on that?
about $2 million, a little over $2 million. So again, you're looking at about 20%.
We got $11 million worth of revenue.
Under 11 million. And we have a
We have
little over
2
$2 million
net. And that's 23% or something?
No, it's about 20%, approximately 20%.
Okay.
We have that expansion again this year in terms of that. Hopefully in a couple weeks, or a couple of board meetings actually, we'll be able to share our actual revenue this year and our FTEs in terms of our people.
Can you, again, you talked about many numbers, but the one that I'm particularly interested in is the accuracy on your forecast versus your actual.
It's
Go over that again.
0.0016%. If you look at that as a percentage of the overall budget, that's our percentage, which is a 0.1, less than, it's like 0.105% of a variance. So it's $99,393 on a $63 million budget. So another point to think about, a lot of times I hear conversations about our projected budget compared to our amended budget. So think about where we sit right now in our fiscal year cycle. We are operating on our projected budget that you approved in June. You just heard Dr. Gray tonight talk about the volatile increase in enrollment that we could not anticipate. So you can expect when we amend the budget in January that we are not going to be even close to our projected budget. And so our amended budget is when we really know where we're going to end up.
Our hope is this year we're going to be higher. That would be great. Right. Again, the way I'd equate it to people that don't work in the school, for whatever business you're in, I would say you have to take what you think your budget will be for the year, not knowing your revenue and not knowing what the actual widgets are that you sell or operate with, what they're going to be worth for that year, and you have to forecast that for 12 months and be within 2%. So in terms of your particular, but if our budget's $60-some million, if your personal budget wasn't that high, it would be like you were less than 10 cents off for the year.
But the difference between your budget and our budget that we work on, we're on the income and you have a fixed amount that you're gonna get. You know that right now.
So, most years. Yeah, it's been a while since they've done a mid-year proration. Absolutely, that's a good point.
I have a question, going back to page 71 on the check register. I'm looking at the Verizon wireless bills, the bill with multiple phones, and I'm just curious how we have a cell phone bill of $782 on one phone. And another phone is for $299.
The $300 or $782 one is our bank of custodial phones. There's 34 phones in that number. What was your other question?
Okay, and then, then there's another custodial cell, I'm assuming it's custodial cell phone that says CUST for $299.
Yeah, it depends on how it's grouped.
One of them could be smartphones and the others would be like a flip phone. There are only some that have smartphones, there are the others that have flip phones.
So are we, I guess, can you explain how many phones do we have in the district and how are we compensating on the phone?
I think it's almost 70, and people that utilize the phones pay half of the service.
Okay,
So the district pays half the service, we pay half the service, we purchase our phones.
When you say half the service.
So if the service is $60, I pay $30 a month, the district will pay $30 a month. The reason we went to that 8 years ago is because then I could call and they have to pick up. So if we don't pay anything for their phones, and I call on the weekend, they not necessarily have to pick up in terms of that. It works well for maintenance, it works well for principals, it works well for custodians.
You had that issue?
I have not had that issue, so.
Well, and the other issue too is that we didn't want to carry two phones. So we said, well, why don't we just consolidate our resources and split it in half?
Yeah, I'm not pushing back on compensating for cell phone. I'm questioning how we're compensating for cell phone.
We also do E-rate reimbursement. So E-rate reimbursement's a subsidy that we get in terms of our phones that comes through Dr. Turner and helps pay down some of these bills.
So we don't have a district, do we have a district, do we have a district policy that speaks to we compensate for up to X amount per month on a cell phone?
We don't have a policy, it's just our procedure. If you're gonna have a district phone, you're paying this amount.
But and is that half, and you said half? So if somebody's cell phone bill is $200 a month, then we pay.
Remember, we don't do it that way. All our minutes are pooled. So we're in a governmental pool. And so the data, the minute, well, it's unlimited minutes, but the data is pooled. And so on an average, everybody gets about 5 gigs of data in terms of that. And so I use very little data. Somebody might use a little more, but we don't exceed our data limit. So it doesn't cost the district anymore because it's a pooled amount of that resource.
Have we evaluated whether that pooled amount is worth versus the difference in what if we pay $50 a month for a cell phone? Like, so we're compensating you $50 a month to carry a cell phone. You can use your own cell phone, you can use district cell phone, but you're getting X amount per month.
Not really. So, go ahead.
So we get one big cell phone bill with all our minutes and our data all pooled together, and we're all using that same pool. So we take the cost of the cell phone that it costs the district, subtract the revenue that we get from our E-rate reimbursement, and split it in half with the employee and the employer. So the employer, which is the school district, pays the bill. The payroll deduction comes out of the employee's check once a month, and it's $35 a month. So the employee is reimbursing the district for their half.
It's actually more than half because $56.24 is what the district monthly line charges. So we pay 35 of that, so we actually pay more than half.
So I think the question is, so that line item on the check registers are outgo to Verizon.
It doesn't
We
include,
recoup-
that's
It
right.
does not show the balance
That's
of
right.
the recoup of the E-rate or
That's correct.
the reimbursement.
Yes.
So the 2,281 is what we wrote a check to Verizon for.
Right.
And then the E-rate,
Takes on part, I would do that.
in addition to whatever the employees pay.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? All right. Human resources, Dr. Gray.
Human resources, we've talked about class size and fully staffed and start of the year, those have all went well. One contract I was nervous about, but it's worked fairly well, switching subs to EduStaff. Anytime you have a wholesale switch like that, I worry about numbers because it's a kind of a tedious process for subs, and they don't make a lot of money or enough money for the job that they have to do. We are back to our pool number that we had last year, which makes me happy because we're not really in the what I would call sixth season yet in terms of subs out and teachers out. So it looks like our numbers have climbed to what I would call an acceptable level. Our fill rate is over 95% presently. We always hover around the 93 to 96% fill rate in terms of our subs. We monitor that on a weekly basis. I go through that with Shelley Kennedy down in our HR office because there are times a year, and I harp on Dr. Surrey all the time about taking people out of the classroom because I like it when teachers are in there. She does a great job of that. We like to do it after hours. I'd rather pay somebody to stay than pull somebody out when they could be instructing. So she's done a wonderful job with that over the last several years. Oh, speaking of that, I'm looking to move forward. We talked a little bit about the custodial wages in terms of that. We did a pretty significant market analysis in terms of those around us. Some are less, a couple are more. We've been losing some to a couple of nearbys that are just an uptick away from us. It won't be a significant amount of money. It'll be able to be sustained in our existing budget, and so we're going to move forward with that here in the near future. Just an FYI.
So on that note, we can retain custodians, we'll be able to get a wage that will stay.
That's the goal. Yeah. When we looked at the market analysis, we saw some districts around us starting people at 10, ending up at roughly the 1250 range. We end up at the 1250. Where we're getting hurt is the initial person, so we'd like to move to that 11 range. That'll help us retain. Then there's a step process that gets you to the 1250 or a lead position if you end up in that particular area.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to board reports. Who's the board report for this evening? Board report, Mr. Stahl.
I'm going to bring up a couple things. First off, the BART program. I've been closely watching it, part of it, and coaching in it, and it's doing very well. There's been some hiccups in the start, as with any program, but I've taken consensus with most of these parents as they come and go at different times in those different buildings, and they're very pleased with it. We're talking about making some tweaks to it where we'll offset the schedule of the sport from that of the high school schedule, which would allow for mentorship from our students that actually play the sports.
And in HS hours.
Yes. And the kids, when they come in those uniforms, they're like superheroes. Those little ones just playing to them. Can't wait to hear what comes out of their mouth. We've got a couple of basketball players that are currently out there helping us, and they got control, and the kids love it. So it's a great program, the kids get a lot of fun with the parents love it. They see where they can go. It's kind of exciting to see the little ones interact with them. In 4.5 weeks, we're going to be switching over to floor hockey and volleyball. Floor hockey's got a lot of interest. Is it something that you can't just get in most of the programs? So there's a lot of interest there. Most of the parents that are there, plus the ones that aren't, have been discussing, yeah, I can't wait for that. So we're anticipating huge results from that one. The volleyball is also huge because at that age group, it's kind of hard to find a good program or a close program, so it's going to do well as well. Brighton Boutique fundraiser that we're having on Thursday from 5 to 9. It's with Ford. They're doing the Drive for Your School program that they've done for other organizations in our schools. You can test drive a car for $20, 100% of that proceeds go to the store. And I've passed out the mission statement of the store before, and anybody wants to see it, it's here again. Our mission is to provide resources to support the funds and the needs of the schools, or the kids in our school district. So far, we're looking to open on the 1st, October 1st. Kind of excited about it. It's a mad dash to get this store going. It's been a long time since I was in retail, but getting real quick teaching on this again. It's been a lot of fun and it's been a lot of work, but I really think it's going to be really rewarding for us.
Did you say Ford?
Ford, Brighton Ford.
Any other board reports?
Some good news. A few days back, we had our band student from Brighton School and our principal, Kevin Johnson, Howell, for the first time taking school representative student who was doing something similar in thinking. And our guest speaker was Judge Hattie. And Judge Hattie was, I think, speak kind of how he felt about the kids working on this. He was very moved and thought it was a really positive move forward for the two school districts. I did put a calling out. They asked how we were doing with the other school districts being involved, and so far we haven't seen any response from Hartland, Howell, our friends in Fowlerville. It would be nice to, like I said, as we continue to work on this, if board members have other friends and people involved in other school boards possible to promote the idea. And I think it was very beneficial. We also had one of the county commissioners, Mr. Green, was there, and he had to meet our students, our student and our principal and our student meeting. And again, a very good step forward. And which the judge went over, our circuit judge went over, was the problems within the county. He talked about it very passionately, about the work that we need to do proactively on this habituated use and the problems that sometimes be teens, it can be adults, it can be, prescriptions given out for sporting incidents when they're younger. There's all kinds of things that are happening that we need to really get a hold of. And I would take my hat off to Judge Hattie for making an appearance there, meeting with us. The boardroom was full that night, and a good step forward. And I think, as we talked before, I think Brighton School is taking a shot at this to make a better place for our kids is very important. Hopefully, in leading the way in this community and our county to proactively work on it. So that's that. And on not as good a note, I received some information about one of our parent PTO presidents that was soliciting and working on elections during school time. And it went to the point that it happened here in the back room here when it was a PTO meeting. It happened at Scranton Middle School. It happened again, I understand, at a multi-meeting where candidates were invited and others weren't. So I had to take a little soul searching here and decide what I thought I should do about it as a board member. Maybe a little different than Mr. Stahl's position on stuff earlier. I think that as an elected official, when things come to our attention, we're supposed to take care of it. Now, administratively, I'm going to lean on that in just a second, to determine the policies that the school has in place, which I've looked up some regarding the judicial side of this. And so before I go any further, I'd like the superintendent to chime in on what we can do as a board once we're informed of this information accurately. What can we do to prevent it from happening again, most importantly?
Yeah, it typically happens because it seems like every election we have somebody violate this. We typically reach out to the person who violated it, let them know they violated it, see if they were doing it intentionally, not intentionally. that typically allows us the ability to either not have them back to those particular types of meetings or even send letters that are kind of ratcheted up from there. It depends on if there's consistent intentional abuse of those particular policies. And we've, like I said, we've had that in the past. In the 8 years I've been here, I think I've dealt with it 2 or 3 different times in terms of that. And never has there been a situation where I haven't addressed it originally where it continued. So my hope is that that's the case as we move forward.
In this situation, the person's name is Sherry Ostrich, and she's the president of the local.
If you're going to address me, you can talk to me directly instead of avoiding my phone calls.
And in that situation, the facts are that she has a campaign committee, and she announced with the information and literature that she handed out on public school property during school, since she was campaigning for a group. And again, it goes against one of the bylaws of her PTO. They don't allow it. It goes against the federal statute and laws. It goes against the state. It goes against ours as a school. And I think that as the information comes out in its entirety and such, because there is a committee established, and those committee names were on the information that were handed out on school property during school hours. And I don't want to bring it up, but I have to. In fact, I believe you were at one meeting when the information was brought out. You were present.
I was present. I wasn't aware the information was brought.
I'm sure,
but I was present.
I'm sure that the information, I believe, was at 9:30 in the morning.
It was at our PAC meeting in terms of.
Other presidents of board members or presidents of PTOs were present.
Yes.
And there were also students present.
There weren't students at the time in relation to the video when it was passed out.
But students attended that meeting at a time.
Yeah, 3 high school students.
So like high school students that came to this room when that happened, or just after?
After.
Okay. So does that particular situation violate school board policy?
I would say in the nature of the language, yes. In terms of that, I have again, I will make contact with that, and again, as I've done in the other situations, treat it the exact same way.
As we go forward with this situation, I'd like for your direction as our superintendent on how the board should act on it, because the way I read the policy for the school board, it has to do with assumes the school board. It says the Board of Education assumes jurisdiction over any dispute or controversy arising within the district and concerning any matter in which authority has been vested in the board by statute. So this becomes a board issue, because I believe it's a statute from what I've researched. So I'd like for you to determine if it is a statute, the violation.
It wouldn't be how we've handled this in the past. Again, in the past, and we've had, it seems like every single day, that every single time that we have an election, somebody violates it. It seems like people violate it with a multitude of different reasons. Most of the time, I would say it's purely out of ignorance, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Again, when I see it, I typically call. I talk to the person and I say, you can't do it. Probably one of the biggest violations of this would be on the actual election day when people violate the 500 feet rule in terms of the buildings. And the signs things, those are always a challenge too.
99% of the time I would support all that.
Yeah.
I have a communication here from our Mr. Murphy, which is, I believe, our chief in Brighton Township, correct? Supervisor.
I don't think he is anymore.
I mean, well, this year he is. In the communication,
I don't know.
The communication says, why is your PTO so against these rights? And they're talking about the rights of parents who want to have a charter school. And this is the same Sherry Osterman was writing to him regarding her issues. But he's representing our PTOs in our schools. And in their bylaws,
why are you bringing up her private conversations over email? That is obnoxious.
these conversations are public knowledge. And the situation is that when you discuss, and PTO is brought up as a supporting factor, that violates the...
She wasn't representing the PTO when she wrote that email, and you drawing that conclusion is disingenuous at best.
Please.
Read the email.
I would suggest that Mr. Murphy is the one that drew it, because it says, why is your PTO? I'm relating to a township official. So,
It has nothing to do with the township.
I understand, but
It's
if this
interesting
person is
how nobody will
representing.
address
This is irrelevant. You can't
Please.
abuse your place on the board to do
This
this.
is not an open conversation, please. You had your opportunity.
My name
Please.
is being rug around.
I understand that.
Conversation.
So specifically then,
Gentlemen, careful.
specifically then, the violation of the 501c3 in Brighton Area School policy. On date of 9/13/2016, 9:30 a.m. Sherry Osterman, Illinois Elementary 501c3 president, attending a PTO PAC meeting at Brighton Area School's back building. Present, the superintendent, all Brighton Area PTO's presidents, Brighton Area trustee and treasurer Ken Stahl. So that brings me to that point. When you realized this happened, Mr. Stahl, why didn't you stop?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it.
Actually, Ken was in the room. Peter left.
I was, yeah. In fact, it's possible, I was here to talk about the vote on the chief. That's the only reason.
That's fine. And then again, the Brighton High School students are after these things were handed out. Now, the next thing, in the board policy number, I believe is 3231A, is, it happened again. So on 9/13 at 6:30 p.m., there was a board setting for PTO that announced school board members were invited. In that, only 4 were invited, and it had Sherry Osterman's name next to the board agenda, and I guess 3 showed up. There's 8 candidates running. That's also against policy not only of the board, of the PTO board, but it's against pretty much anything.
I didn't even attend that meeting.
Your name was on the, okay, and then.
Hey, you can talk to me, I'm right here.
Please, this is not an open conversation. Mr. Conley, if you can just refer to policy, you said 3231A.
Yes.
And then went ahead to another agenda, another
I
item.
know right on my list. Yeah, and it's, so in that, we discussed the meeting at Stratton, correct? We discussed the meeting at Maltby, and we discussed the meeting here. So that would be Stratton, Maltby, and the back building. All within the same couple of days.
Those are all on the same day.
Say they were all on the same,
All
all
on the
on the
same
same day?
Yeah.
Okay. Get that clarified.
Or, no, one day apart. Scranton was the first day, the Beck meeting and the Maltby meeting were on the same day.
Okay. And so technically then, at Stratton Middle School, is there a principal present in that meeting?
I think after the meeting started, yes. He had no knowledge of those particular items. I've already talked.
So without the principal's knowledge, these things were handed out in the meeting. And also in the Beck building, without my superintendent, our superintendent's knowledge, they were handed out without your knowledge. To everyone that was here, except for you.
Yeah, what about
We're going to back around this meeting a little bit. So the Stratton Middle School meeting, we had a principal that attended after the meeting started, correct?
Mr. Wilson was not in the room.
Please.
These sheets were handed out.
So,
I have to-
I just have a question. I mean,
Shoot.
I really can't follow what you're going through in any detail. I would like to know what you would like the board to understand and what you'd like to give to Dr. Gray
Yep.
to dig into, because
Correct, that's where we're heading. That's where
we're not heading there, because I don't
We are,
think
we're heading, trust me, we're heading. Okay, so in the meetings in our school buildings, during school hours, the students present, almost present.
No,
Hold on. They were present. We're not sure about that at Scranton Middle School.
Tommy was there, ask Tommy.
At the Scranton one, there were no students. At the Maltby one, that's after school hours.
That's different.
On the video, obviously, the high school students arrived after.
But the students were in the buildings. These buildings were occupied with students. And all this.
During Scranton and during the back, obviously our alternative high school students were here, and at Scranton, the 7th and 8th graders. At Maltby, it was after school hours.
Okay, so now what I'm getting to, what the superintendent to look into and help us with, is that you attended a meeting here at the Beck Building, 9:30 in the morning. You did not receive one of these. I personally saw a video where someone walked behind you, behind your back, and handed it to the person next to you, and on the other side. I saw it. And you were not included in that group of communication. Obviously, you would have stopped it. That's why I like this board, and for you to bring back to them. I want that video. I want you to show this board what happened, and I want this board to decide how they want to address this. Thank you.
I have questions.
Yes, sir.
You, John, answer, whoever else. What is the rule on this? Because I am unaware of what.
Again, there's board policy that says you cannot hand out political information at school. Again, I can tell you every year that we have an election, somebody hands out political stuff at events. The biggest area that we get targeted is typically Friday night football games. Those are a challenge for us because you have a large group of people, and that large group of people is a captured audience. So they typically stay in the parking lots to hand those out, which is legal. They stand outside of the front gate, which is legal, but they cannot enter the particular gate, which we've had to remove people from inside the gate on more than one occasion. Signs have also been an issue in terms of being placed on property at inappropriate times. We typically call the person that is in charge of the sign, and we typically have them come remove it. Again, most of the time they're very apologetic when I call them. They didn't know or understand the rule, and they don't do it again. I will have that conversation with the person you're talking about, and we'll go from there. I will also send along the video if you guys would like to see it in terms of that, but I think John described it in terms of that. I didn't see the paper. I never received one of the papers, so people, I don't know or not, I've never gotten it. So it is what it is in terms of that. And my understanding was it didn't happen at Maltby that night. I wasn't aware of the candidate piece in terms of that. And I haven't heard of anything since. So that's kind of where I'm at presently.
On that then, can people who attended the meeting here at the Beck Building, maybe you could get a copy of the actual literature that was handed out to them?
I can ask. I can ask.
Okay, I think that would be good. And then I do have one other thing to finish up with. So under the Hilton Elementary PTO bylaws, the Constitution and bylaws, which are something that they vote on and that we adhere to as far as accepting that they're in our school, because it's a choice that we allow them to be in our school. Because it's not, they don't have an automatic place there.
They're their own 501c. They all have their own paperwork in relation to that. They're not a part of the district, even though they do a great deal for the district.
They do a great job.
That's a norm in terms of schools. PTOs are typically not under the envelope of the school system, typically.
And it claims in their bylaws, in Article 3, page 209, this organization shall be nonpartisan, non-sectarian. No candidate shall be endorsed by it. Neither the name of the organization nor the name of the officer shall be used in any partisan interest except for bond issues or funding village issues. Now, what happened here is a direct violation of the PTO bylaws.
I think you'd have to take that up with the PTO.
Yeah, like I said, well, it appears to be. And then if you continue on about that, and it talks about who's in charge of this, and it says right here that the president, which is under the, just online, is Sherry Osterman. Now this looked up the campaign literature, and the campaign group promoting that literature is under her name. So I just want to share that with you, so that information's there for you.
I'll pass that information, well, she's here, but I'll pass that information along in terms of that as well.
Okay.
I'll make that phone call.
Thank you.
Any more support?
How about those dogs Friday night?
I would like, I mean, some follow-up questions related to that I think need to be discussed. First off, Mr. Conley, when you are addressing various PTO members, are you addressing them as a board member or as a private person?
President of PTO.
No, when your role in addressing,
This evening?
no, just in general, just when
There's
you
no-
make contact.
There's no discussion of it. At tonight, I'm addressing it as a board member.
When you ask for information from PTOs, are you asking for that as a board member or as a business owner?
When I punch it in online and print a copy of it, I'm asking for it. Is that what you're asking me?
In what role? I mean, I have heard from some of the PTOs that feel frankly harassed by you for your approach in asking those questions. So I'm asking, are you a board member addressing the PTOs or are you a private citizen addressing the PTOs?
I think that's not relevant to this conversation. Anything I'm doing here is I'm acting as a board member tonight. If I ask as an individual for a financial statement on a PTO organization, which is a freedom to ask for it, so I can avoid it or just ask for it. That's anybody's right to do that. And you always bring up discrimination, harassed.
No,
You
I'm just
always
asking
do.
questions.
Oh, Dr. Chesney, you always do. And you know.
Let me ask my other
It's
question.
so
then.
ridiculous.
My other question is this, then, related to.
You know how am I going to feel about it later, what you're going to ask me? I feel just fine what I'm doing.
No, it's not what I meant at all. This goes back to a question that I asked earlier, that your place of business is listed as an address as a campaign headquarters.
That is not correct. You know that's not correct. You can see the address on the sign. Why would you bring that up? That wasn't in the minutes. That wasn't what was said.
That wasn't in the minutes either. That
No, it
was,
wasn't.
that was
No,
a
it wasn't.
question that I'm bringing
It
up.
was not.
It is directly.
You can look directly on my sign. You can see where my
I'm
campaign
talking about
headquarters
the
is.
signs. the
There's
signs
plenty of
that-
photographic evidence all over Facebook.
There's photographic evidence that your place of business is campaign headquarters for 3 other candidates, Mr. Connolly. And if you're going to bring up these issues and set yourself up
I'm
in
trying to
this
be
position,
respectful. A little bit. Trying to be respectful, but
if your business headquarters is the campaign headquarters for 3 candidates, it strikes me as somewhere between ironic and hypocritical that you're addressing other people for the same type of violations.
well, I suppose, I guess we just heard something we need to hear come out of someone who's very brilliant but really stupid.
Okay.
Let's face it, I like it. But you drew it out, so you think,
That's appropriate.
oh, I don't think so. He just accused me of running an operation that's not legitimate, so without any knowledge, yes, he did.
No.
That would be the.
Sure I did.
Well, let's be informed, let's be informed, and I think that we got where we need to go tonight, and I think that it's not hypocritical to do what's proper, and what you should do if you are put in a situation where you realize something that has to be addressed, and it shouldn't be allowed to continue, because...
Is your address on the bottom of the campaign sign?
What campaign sign?
The ones with 3 candidates on them that has your business address on the bottom.
What campaign sign?
Can we just move on with this, please? Bond reports, Mr. Stahl.
Just 2 points. The faucets that were an issue in the food room have been replaced. And they look great. And as far as the store goes, the cover's off. It's still in the hands of the state, the application for approval.
We still estimate our timeline for construction will be.
It was in the other day, nothing's happened yet.
Well, not until at least November. Yeah, our goal was sometime in November to actually start the construction.
What is the timeframe?
It's been I sent you guys all that email where it was resubmitted to the state. You got that from Jason, who works for Pete Lindau. And, you know, if you guys know a better way to get the state to move faster on those things, I'd like to know. So, I'm sure we'll have something in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully it'll be a final approval, and then we can schedule it. We still have a good 6-week window in terms of when we had planned on constructing. Our goal, again, would be to open that store after our holiday break.
But again, I'm assuming those trades wind up being bid now because of the delay in it, and we won't be able to go back to the current trades, I'd say.
We probably would have.
Yeah, just that there's been several times in Culver Public when members of the public have asked for a bond summary, just of where we spent, you know, the 88 million, what projects we spent on. And I know there's the 400-page version of where we've done that. When might we see the?
But it's not a 400-page. Have you been online and looked at it?
I have not.
Okay, so on the bond update on the webpage, the Treasury document is on there. I shared that with you at the last meeting. The Treasury document, if you actually look into it, you only have to go to the sections where it lists the projects that we sent through Treasury. Now remember, bond language is very generic, and it's generic for a reason, because when you're working through a bond project, things happen in terms of projects. Our goal was to take the original Treasury document and make it happen. If you go through that Treasury document, which I've been through, I think you've been through, and maybe some others have been through, we have made everything happen in terms of that particular document. The good part was we hit other than the Luan that was at the high school, and we started that project, but it screwed our walls up, so we pulled it back off and fixed the walls, and then got a credit for the Luan that we didn't actually use. The additional projects that we've done have come about because we've managed this bond financially as well as I think you can in terms of it, and we got very fortunate to hit a market where trades were hungry, and so we got a lot more for our bang for our buck out of the $88.5 million than what the $88.5 million is. With that, all the additional projects have run through the subcommittee of the board, which is the bond committee, and have come through this particular board. You pass it in terms of different things that you've done. And the recommendations come out of that committee, which several of you have been members on for several years. In terms of aligning the dollar figures to it, all of our financial statements actually have a section that are related to the bond that align perfectly with the year and the scope of the project that we're doing for the bond work. I would have to have somebody, and I know Ms. Hine gave me a specific time frame of January 14 to December 14. So I can pull those bond projects, and so could anybody else, because the actual financial statements that align with the bond projects are also under that bond update. So they, just as easily as I, could click on those bond updates, look at the date in terms of the revenue spent, and then if they had specific questions, they could come in and meet with me. And that would be my suggestion, because I feel like they have a question about a particular project, and I've been through all of these projects, so I could probably answer that question. Some additional projects that we did, we were able to extend some of the playground projects, we were able to extend some of our CTE classroom work. This project that you all approved for the Peddler's Paw was never in the original bond, as were band uniforms, as were a host of other things that we're very fortunate enough to be able to manage this bond to the nth degree so that everybody got a little extra in terms of that.
On that note, Dr. Gray, do you have a list of those projects that we were able to do in addition to the scope of work?
I could probably create one.
Let's face it, there was a lot of good things done, and there's a lot of positive things that we're, obviously you're fighting tonight to continue, and making sure that we're all doing our part to do that. So I think that it would be almost another, but look at what you've been able to help us accomplish, and I can suggest that Board Member Trombley and some others that are on the board and that are not on the board now. I mean, you guys work very hard, and I think that
thousands of hours.
The impact, though, on this program is long-reaching for hundreds and hundreds of students.
Thousands of students.
Yes, but over time, yes. But I look at that, so I would suggest that I see the peeling of the onion, you get an idea of what it is. If that's awful time consuming too. But at the same time, those things are available. All the information.
They have been from day one.
Right.
The Treasury report, the very first day that we passed the bond, we linked to our webpage. That's been on there.
Is there anything as a district that we haven't done that we committed to in the bond?
The only thing was the Luan on the walls at the high school. And what Luan is, it's an FRP material that would feel like a vinyl product that's textured that would allow for if kids, I'm going to say accidentally, bump a wall at the high school, that they don't create a hole in the drywall. What we found was when we adhered the luan to the hallways of the high school are lath and plaster. Lath and plaster is a different material than a drywall gypsum board type product. Gypsum board is put on with screws, it's very rigid. Lath and plaster is just that, thin strips of wood, lath, you put it on with plaster. If you put the luan in, it becomes too heavy, it pulls away from the wall, and it looks like it's pulling the drywall. We only did 2 pieces of the material as a test run. Once we found that it was pulling away from the lath and plaster, we sent all the luan back. I think the credit was 40 grand or something like that. And we patched those walls, and then we had to repaint in terms of that. So all of that material, all of the treasury report, everything that we promised was done. I could create a list, as long as my arm, of additional projects that we've done in terms of the bond. Again, we still have money left from the bond. We still will finish the technology portion that we promised. We've spread it out over an additional 2 more years in terms of that. That'll get us close to the 2020 date. And there will be a real opportunity after 2020 for this district to take a look at refinancing those bonds, to pull equity out in relation to continuing without costing a penny to the taxpayers. So those are opportunities too, because of the time frame and scope of work that we did. But again, I would really need more specific. Even the 12-month period, we probably did $25 million worth of work in that 12-month period. That would be 2. So the second summer of that, it would be hard to, I would need to know what somebody was looking for in terms of that. And I'd be more than willing to sit down and run through that, because we have a very detailed schedule that we created and process that we did for each summer of work. Now, of the $25 million, 95% of that was done in a 70-day period over the summer. So I think in 14, that was primarily high school stuff, parking lots, pools, those types of things. Earlier than that, the very first would be the outdoor facility at the high school, and then the middle would have been the refurbishing of all the other buildings, primarily.
But was the carpet here, was that building included in the original contract?
No.
So this was additional work as well?
Correct.
So students have new carpet?
I think you got closer to $95 to $100 million worth of bang for your buck out of this bond. Just based on the amount of interest that we got off, because you remember, when we went to sell the bonds, we had 2 record lows in terms of the interest rate, which we hadn't budgeted for, which will allow this bond to be paid off in roughly half the time, which will save the taxpayers close to $35 million in interest alone. So that's a positive too. It would be if I would equate it to, instead of a 30-year mortgage on your house, you have a 15-year mortgage on your house. And you can see the payback is significantly different, which creates the equity, which after 2020 or a 10-year period, you would have some options.
And also, I had one, a couple other items we had. So health occupations, room revisions.
It's not in the original bond.
The special education room.
It was not in the original bond.
All those rooms were rebuilt with the bond dollars.
Correct.
Because they were excess.
And they were well within the bond language scope.
Correct.
Because in the bond language scope, we have the ability to refurbish and renovate.
And in our special education wing, where we did that room, those classes are full.
Yes.
And health occupations classes.
We have 6 hours a day instead of 5.
Add another class. Where our
auto shop, we spend money in there. We have 6 hours a day instead of 5.
And due to this increased work within the school, opportunities in classrooms, last year we generated an additional $190,000 in income from our CTE dollars. Came in.
That's called added cost funding, because the added cost funding attaches to the top 50 jobs. We align our CTE programs to the top 10 of those jobs, which comes with state funding called added cost funding, which allows us to supplement those programs.
I would suggest highly that the board, and under your direction and guidance and things, that the things have been done well and for the benefit of the students, and that to see that kind of result. And this year I think we're going to get, I think, $160,000 roughly in added cost funding, which is great. Depending on, it all depends on which one.
A lot of it's going to the media center, which wasn't in the bond.
It did. Well, the media center just spent a couple $100,000 in money that was not set up through the bond. So I think it's going to be a great day to celebrate those things and the benefits that our students have gotten from the taxpayers' dollars here in Brighton. So
again, I feel like it went well. I feel like the next time we go out for one, I think people will look back at this with positive attitudes, because it's helped to transform at least the physicality of the district.
Well, the school's going to need another one someday, and that's very important. So thank
brings us up to the second call of the public. If you'd like to address the board, please come to the podium, state your name and address, keep your comments for your minutes. Same rules apply as early. Tell them when we're actually get towards the end.
Oh, is it finally my turn? Sherry Osterman, Hilton Elementary School PTO President. I would like to apologize to the administration of Brighton area schools and to the school board for campaigning on school grounds. I would never have done that if I had known there was something wrong with it. I'm not a professional campaigner. I didn't know it was a violation. I sincerely apologize. I always thought it was okay to have candidates and school board members at all of our meetings because I've always welcomed all of you. Every time we have a meeting, we try to keep it personable. I introduce every parent. I introduce our administration. I would certainly introduce Mr. Conley to all of our parents because we respect what you do. So I fully apologize for that. As a matter of fact, I remember introducing Nick Fiani to our PTO meetings before. So I just wanted you to know that I feel really bad about it. And the reason why I didn't give Dr. Gray the piece of paper at the PAC meeting is because I know that he has to stay out of it. I would never want him to have sides because he has a lot of respect for the incumbents. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Sue Ellen Wilkin. I'm sorry, God, that's my main name. Ikens, and I live at 125 North 4th, Brighton, Michigan. Actually, that brings me right to what I was going to say last. But I'm just sick and tired of coming to board meetings and having to experience like full body agitation. This is ridiculous. You want to drag us back into the drama of when we had Nick Fiani here. You dragged Nick Fiani into this board and you created as much drama as you possibly could. You have fought the mothers of this district on every possible improvement we've tried to make for our children's education. If it doesn't have to do with the auto shop, you just don't seem to have any interest. I am just
Please
sick.
direct the entire board, not a particular board.
Okay, so for the entire board, what I would say is that we have an obligation to parents and especially to children in the district to stop this kind of conflict. We're better than this. Our community is better than this. And when you model this kind of behavior, you model targeting and bullying and intimidating, strong-arming and silencing. And everybody knows what you're doing. And everybody knows that you're picking on moms who volunteer 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. It's just reprehensible. And I just want to mention, to bring up an email exchange between a taxpayer and her township, I don't know what he was, but township somehow government trustee, blah, blah.
Supervisor.
It's just weird. He shared that with you? Well, that's great. I'm glad you guys are friends. And then you're going to read that here as if it had anything to do with school business? How dare you?
Thank you for your comments.
Julie Hine, I just want to clarify my comments before regarding the absence of bond committee meeting minutes for that period that I outlined. I would like those minutes to be posted. In terms of the projects, my intent is to simplify access to the community. I fully understand that if you go to the drop-down menu and pull to the left and go to the secret and use the decoder ring, that you can unlock the whatchamacallit. But what I'm talking about is an overarching sense that to make things easier for the community with the turnover that Brighton has, to re-access this information and update themselves, whether it's new candidates for the school board who want to donate a lot of time, we shouldn't be making it so difficult. That's my basic point. We should make it a little bit more user-friendly. We should say, as John Connolly just suggested, we should say, this was a fabulous thing, we brought it in under budget, and as a result, we were able to do bingity, 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 bing. Okay? Very simply, I made the same suggestion to Club Wolverine. You know, you could put some information out there on your perspective and your role in the community. You could offer some outreach to best swimmers and have some joint swim sessions. There's a multitude of ways that we can mesh together to be more positive. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But to some other points, I think it's very fair to say that glass houses throwing stones, okay? Get a K-12 email. Just get it, okay? It should be contingent, and every board member should be willing to have a district email. If you're gonna judge everybody on procedure.
All board members have a district email.
I'm just saying, we had to argue about that. And I'm saying glass houses, throwing stones. If you're gonna nitpick about procedure, then don't put your business address at the bottom of campaign signs for 3 candidates. If you're going to complain about flags in the classroom, then be willing to take your lumps when you yourselves do things wrong. And I think that the community will benefit from that as a whole. We uplift the general tenor of the conversation when we provide positive outcomes, and instead of going off on our own, we come back to the group and work for solutions that are respectful to everybody.
Listen, I give this 125 minutes for the street band machine. One thing I just wanted to say is adding on to what my mom said, I see that the Board of Education promise up there, and I see that several of those promises were violated today in terms of being respectful and using appropriate terms. And I was a little nervous to come up here and say something, but now I realize basically this board has embarrassed itself enough today.
Thank you.
Hi, Margaret Adams, 1132 Winthrop, Brighton. I am one of the elementary media specialists, and I just wanted to thank Dr. Suri for the enrichment committee and for the enrichment coaches that are going to be moving forward, and the entire board for your faith in that. As one of the media specialists, the 3 elementary media specialists, myself, Nicole Spencer, she's married, and Tracy Richards were all sent to the Project Lead the Way training with our other lead teachers. We are very excited about what we're going to bring to our students. I've been working with Mrs. Lewicki and Mrs. McColgan for years at Spencer Elementary. We have done a lot together just recently for the Project Lead the Way, getting it ready and starting tomorrow. So I'm very excited to see how it starts tomorrow, and very excited to be one of the lead teachers in that. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board this evening? All right, I see none. Our next meeting is Monday, October 11th.
Actually, it's 10.
Oh, 10. Thank you. Just reading out the script. And we are adjourned.